Yeah.
Just this. You know, I bet I can just do this and go around corners.
Oh, for sure. Yeah, it's like...
La 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 la. Okay, here we go. All right, power. There is 30, 40, 50. There it shifted into high gear at 55. There's 60 miles an hour. Can you do 65, 65, 60? Nope. Right.
Like the Falcon.
Here we go again.
Yeah.
Can I saw my way completely through a corner? Yes, I can. Tighter corner. Yes, I can. So when you close the door, that ashtray lines up with the rear seats so your kids can smoke.
Hey kid, I'm your uncle, and I got a proposition for ya. I need your old high school yearbook. I know you graduated in 2005, and I graduated in 1980, but I just want to look at your yearbook. You can drive my Ford Granada if I can look at your yearbook. Is your friend Trish Carpenter still in your? Is she still come over? Do you know where your yearbook is? Proposition. Okay. I'll trade you my 1978 Ford Granada for your high school yearbook. I just need to see your yearbook. I'm your uncle. Where's your yearbook? I just need to see your yearbook. Just let me see your yearbook. I want to look at Trish Carpenter. I'm your uncle.
This is 1979, peak malaise era. The boundaries of the malaise era of American cars begin. They begin with the oil crisis in 1973. But where it ends is vague. I say the malaise era ends in 1984 with GM's introduction of the C4 Corvette, the first American car to embrace the new digital era instead of railing against it. With the C4, American cars finally had new technology to offer. But in 1979, American manufacturers had nothing to offer. No new technology, no new safety measures, no gadgets, no ECUs, no new suspension, and no new styling. Ford Granada, the car that offers you nothing. Imagine that. Toyota was killing it in the 1970s with their terrific Mark I Celica. Honda was getting into the game with the Civic and their fantastic motorcycles. And Datsun or Nissan was cemented in America with their Z cars. But the Ford domestic manufacturers, what did they have? The same technology from the early 1960s, served up like buffet slop at a failing casino on the edge of Reno. Open your mouth, take out them dentures, cross your eyes, 'cause here comes soft and brown and soft and brown and soft and brown and more soft and more brown. Old hairy balls and an infected ass. Here's your Ford Granada. And a wife with one fake tit. She sucks your dick and jerks you off at the same time, but doesn't take her pinky ring off, and it keeps slamming into your groin flesh. You try to say something, but she sneezes and vomits up artificial crab meat onto your dick while it's still inside her mouth. And you can hear Jimmy Carter talking on the hotel TV about a developing hostage crisis in Iran. Your dick is 30% hard, and she washes her mouth out with strawberry-flavored wine cooler and goes back in to finally get you off, and your cum is thick and disturbing, and it extrudes like a Play-Doh fun factory. Ford Granada, The car that denied reality. It's slow, inefficient, poorly made, has terrible handling, and was advertised as being just as good as a Mercedes W114, because it kind of looks like one. The Ford Granada was for disillusioned Americans who didn't want to believe that the U.S. economy was in a recession. They didn't want to accept that they were downsizing from a full-size car to a mid-size.
I'm not getting poor. I'm just buying a personal luxury car.
Personal luxury car. This is a invented class of vehicle that appeared during the 1970s to disguise mid-size cars and make people think they were big cars. We can't compete with Honda and Toyota and Datsun. We can't make an economy car that Americans want to buy. And we can't really make fast muscle cars anymore because we don't know how to abide by the new EPA regulations yet. And people are getting poorer and they can't really buy our full-size cars. So what are we going to do? Let's invent a new type of car. Let's take a mid-size and put big bumpers on it. And give it really long doors. 2 of them, just 2 really long doors. And then we'll make the insides as plush as a couch. And boom! It's not recycled old junk. It's something new. Forget that the engine is a 250 cubic inch or 4.1 liter i6 making between
Gay porn.
88 and 97 horsepower. Forget that the rear suspension on a Granada is the same leaf spring setup directly from the first-gen Falcon from 1960. Ignore that the Galaxy got rear springs and a 3-link rear as early as 1965. No, here you go with your leaf springs. Enjoy your wobbly-ass Granada in 1979 with no overdrive gear and optional power steering. Optional. Oh, and an AM radio. You're driving a personal luxury car. Well, crack open a Billy Beer and crank up the Frank Zappa. Because we're getting on the Vine Street Expressway to watch the Broad Street Bullies perform dental surgery on ice. Ford Granada. Luxury that spares every expense. See, Ford was going through its European phase, comparing their cars to Mercedes in a brochure and advertisements, but these first-gen models were assembled in New Jersey and Michigan, and it shows. The interior of a Granada looks like a furniture store showroom. The Granada looks like the type of car you drive when you're a business owner who considers himself the pillar of the local community, when in reality you just own an excitement video off the interstate. For something that's supposed to be the American version of European luxury, which is also weird because Ford had a Granada that was a European car for the European market that they could have just brought over here, but they didn't because it was built a little too well. The American Granada doesn't really have a whole lot to suggest it's meant for people with taste, any more expensive than Miller High Life. If a second-gen Camaro is a private who holds the record for the most field-grade Article 15s in company history, then the Ford Granada is a business dad on the home front waiting for Johnny to come home so he can tell him how his war was harder. The Granada wants to believe it's more important than it is, that it's more in touch than it is. But it isn't. Aesthetically, it's of its era, but mechanically, it feels way older. The only unique thing here is the softness and the affordability. Sure, you get curved rear glass, and that's nice, but it costs money. And every dollar you spend on a Ford Granada impacted the appeal of a car like this in the 1970s. But it doesn't even feel like the costs were cut. It feels like the costs were never factored in. It's planning a wedding on a budget of pocket change. Ford Granada. I prepared for future baldness by marrying early. This is like a pinball machine. From a time before every pinball machine was tied to a movie. There's no theme, it's just pinball. And the Granada's theme was just car. We aren't an economy car, but we really are. But also, this thing isn't economical at all. But at least there's something approaching a family mindset here. The rear passenger compartment has an ashtray for the kids. Because it's never too early to take your citizenship exam for flavor country. It's tacky in the way that only the 70s could truly be. You get into a Ford Granada and you half expect there to be a hostess asking, smoking or non? This runs on the 250 cubic inch or 4.1 liter thrift power straight six, which in 1979 supposedly gets you around 97 horsepower, but I have also heard that this thing is as low as 88 horsepower. But even with all the emissions choking, or rather that the emissions engineering, or by that I mean, okay. So they say, oh, the cars didn't run during the emissions regulations. These engines can run, but they didn't know how to make them environmentally friendly, so they just detuned the hell out of them. The only saving grace is that you still get 210 pound-feet of torque. So the car will get out of its own way. The name of this color is
Antique Cream.
And the joke writes itself quicker than if you name this thing Short Range Money Shot. Fuel economy. Okay. For all the engineering you did to these old straight sixes to try to make them fuel efficient, environmentally friendly, what does it make? Ford said this thing got 17 miles per gallon, but Matthew says he gets maybe 15 to 16 miles per gallon in the best situations. Crazy taxi. My 63 Galaxy with the sniper setup and a 352 cubic inch big block V8 got 17.8. And it makes around 250 horsepower and probably about 300 pound-feet of torque. I get it with modern technology, right? Anyway, but this is the malaise era. And the lessons learned from the 70s oil crisis and the import boom hadn't yet sunk in yet. It would take until the 80s for American manufacturers to figure out how to make power and get good gas miles at the same time. If anything, it felt like Ford was pretending the crisis wasn't even happening, just plugging its ears and singing Camptown races. The original MSRP for a Ford Granada was $5,358 in 1979. Now, that's after the dealer markup. So before that, it was $4,352. But anyway, so let's go with the first number, $5,338. Adjusted for inflation to 2024, and that comes to around $24,277. That's cheap. Imagine today being able to go out and buy a new car, a new Ford, for under $25,000. Yes, power steering is optional, and you get a one-speaker AM radio, and air conditioning is also optional. You get no overdrive. They call it the Select Shifts 3-speed automatic. And you got a slightly new technology. DuraSpark electronic ignition system. That just means there's no more points breakers in the distributor. That's all it means. Oh, I love this bit. There's no temperature gauge. Yeah. Ford doesn't want you to know how hot your water is getting. And if it's anything like my Galaxy, it's probably hotter than a bricklayer's inseam. But for all that being said, this is in remarkable condition. Could this actually be 25,000 miles? I mean, it has some rust from living in Buffalo, but it's perfect otherwise. Matthew kept it in great shape, which is interesting considering it was a car that he used to make fun of with his friends after watching YouTube reviews of it because it seemed bad at everything. But then Matthew saw someone listing one online. On a whim, he went to go see it. He offered $2,000, and the guy surprisingly accepted. He treated it as a project for the last 2 years, keeping it in shape through all the typical Granada problems, like the taillights falling out. And it's probably one of the better examples you're ever going to find that doesn't have a lawn chair and a large prostate sitting in front of it at a car show. People say you should never meet your heroes because they'll only disappoint you. On some rare occasions, you shouldn't meet your heroes because you run the risk of them being exactly as good as you think they are. And then you're left with the question, now what? Once you've driven your McLarens, and your Ferraris, and your Lexus LFAs, where is there left to go? What about meeting your villains? The ones we've created in our minds without ever meeting. No one ever says, don't meet your enemies. Maybe they say that because your enemies can't disappoint you. What they can do is arguably more unexpected. You might actually grow to love your enemies. That seems to be what happened with Matthew here. And it seems like it happened with Ford, who decided rather than competing with their so-called enemy, Mercedes, they'd just try to be more like them. I mean, it didn't work because it never felt like Ford truly committed. You're either luxury or economy. They're mutually exclusive. You can't do both. Ford can love its enemy, but it doesn't mean they should be anything like them. So maybe that's the moral. Sometimes having an enemy is better because of the lessons it teaches you about yourself. Yeah, it shows growth when you learn to love your enemy. But maybe an enemy is there to teach you to better love yourself. I love to hate to love these old cars. I feel like it gives me a clearer picture of the things I don't like and all the nuance that exists between on the sliding pH scale of my own acidic attitudes. Because in 1979, there was nothing to do but wait out the economy, wait out the emergent technology, wait for technology to improve, wait for whoever is in charge to improve your life, if that was even possible, or wait for, as Hunter S. Thompson called it, wait for the inevitable victory over the forces of old and evil. There's nothing to do but wait. So get comfortable. And that's what the Ford Granada offered Americans. Comfort. The car's fine if you're going in a straight line at 50 miles an hour. So steady as she goes. The Ford Granada makes just enough power to pull forward and steady on. Ford should have compared the Granada to a Rover, not a Mercedes. Keep calm and carry on, etc. I do enjoy the Granada. There's no point in fighting on our side or theirs. In this car, there is no urgency, no point in rushing or putting your foot down, because nothing's going to happen anyway. Ask the Thriftmaster 250 to do work, and all it will do is turn precious gasoline into decibels, not velocity. Ford Granada. Stoicism on four wheels. What started as a car for creepy uncles becomes the automotive embodiment of Zen. Times will improve. Do the best you can with what you have and enjoy yourself.